Hey, welcome back, everybody, to SmarterUmedia, and congratulations for investing in yourself today to get just a little bit smarter. Remember, if we get 1% smarter every day, we're 37 times smarter at the end of the year. That's a pretty good dividend. We are excited today. We have Mark Griffin, the name on the Alderson Griffin Center for Family Business and Entrepreneurship. He's an attorney. I like to say a recovering attorney like I am. He has run all kinds of businesses with tremendous acumen. He also is something of a baseball star in Texas, which we'll talk a little bit about. And he is just leaving as the chairman of the Board of Regents of the entire Texas Tech University system. Mark Griffin, welcome to SmarterUmedia.
Steve, thank you. It's great to be with you.
Well, I will tell you, you're one of my favorite new people. So to have you here feels just like we're sitting down around a campfire and we're going to dare to have one of those conversations you never forget. So that's my commitment today.
Thank you. Mine too.
Well, we never wait. We get straight to the business of the chicken timer. You've heard it. You've seen it torture all kinds of people, and we're not going to let you get out of it just because you're the guy who runs the show. So you got 2 minutes. Dare to make me just a little bit smarter, Mark Griffin.
Yes. Steve, thank you. Let me start with a quote, if I might, or two. But from that philosopher Rumi, he said, "Yesterday I was so clever I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise and I am changing myself." And that resonates with me and anyone who is in search of trying to better themselves. I think I want to add one more little quote that is kind of the context of our visit today, and that is this. I think we ought to compare ourselves to who we were yesterday, not who someone else is today. Our culture thrives. It exists on comparative studies. We are bombarded with contextual lessons and lifestyles that we are asked to assimilate and to compare. So I think it's natural for us to say, well, I like this about that guy, or I like this about that lady, and we miss the opportunity to do the self introspection. And so we are born, I think, Steve, with this internal critic, this internal voice. And if it questions or if it makes us doubt ourselves, our endeavors, where we are, then I think it's a voice we need to refrain from listening to. I think it's a cheap trick of a rational mind. We have this. We just have this inherent in our system, and we're always in the world of wow.
I know you think I just put 1 minute on there, but I put 2. It doesn't matter. Finish your thought.
Okay. Well, all I'm saying is we make value judgments for every action that we take. It has a value to it, and in value, a result that we're trying to get to. So they're a precondition for action. But I want to also say that we need to be careful, because sometimes we overvalue what we don't have and we undervalue what we do. And I think I think it needs to be a realization and an understanding, if we're going to be true to ourselves in trying to make ourselves better and in trying to avoid the comparative study, because I think it's the lazy man's way. We have to ask our own questions. We have to deal with our own issues, and we get about the way of negotiating with ourselves. And I think that is the first insight into, I think, a valid comparison that's not based upon the culture's context, but based upon our own introspection and our own ability to negotiate with ourselves for a better tomorrow.
Here, here. Leave it to Mark Griffin to give us enough material for a week. Okay, I mean, you have. It's good. All right, we understand that we are not going to take too much more of your time, but we're gonna. There's so much for us to dig into there and to find a way to truly explore. So anybody who needs to go, you go. You got 2 minutes. You are a little bit smarter, I promise you. And now let's go all the way back to the Rumi quote, because I think that is rather beautiful in its perspective, because you and I have lived a few years and it does feel different when we were 16, when we were 17, and when we won't even mention the ripe old age that we are. But it's a different sort of feeling, and the perspective that you get from the Rumi quote, which sort of was change the world, and then you realized, if I'm going to change anything, I better start right here. Look at that guy in the mirror. So give me some real practical thoughts about how you've discovered that and how you've done it in your life.
Well, I think probably from just an analogy standpoint, who would go and buy a house without hiring an inspector?
Mm,
And what if we're not careful, we go ahead and close on the property and then we're shocked at what we have.
yeah,
And I think anyone would hire an inspector. You can't fix what you do not know is broken.
right.
And I think the first order of business is to do the end. Who am I? Who am I? What am I about? What brings me joy and what brings me despair, and how can I better my situation? Even at my advanced years, Steve, I may not be changing as rapidly as I did 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
But if I'm not changing even today, I'm doing myself a disservice. There's so many things to learn, to understand, to
Yeah.
appreciate. And I think the joy really is in the uphill climb, and it's not on observing or gazing up on the next peak to get our satisfaction. It's in the struggle, it's in the journey, it's in the conversation. And while we're
This
having, yeah,
this is the myth of Sisyphus,
yeah,
right? I mean, there's one of the great mentors of my life used the myth of Sisyphus all the time as not just an allegory to life, but to ask yourself the question, what is the purpose of life? And that's what you're digging into. It's sort of, is the guy rolling the rock up the mountain, is that a statement of life's terrible, or is that a statement of life's amazing?
mhm,
And the answer is it might be a little bit of both, because that might be what life is.
yeah. And I agreed, absolutely. And if we're not negotiating with ourselves, if we're not struggling to try to find a more joyful existence, then we're selling ourselves short, and we're denying those people that we are in relationship an opportunity to see who, not only who we are, but who we can be. and
Yeah.
and I think that's the essence of this life we live. And when we do this introspection, Steve, I know you had Lauren on, talked about gratitude. I think you need to be gracious with yourself
Mm,
and be fair with yourself in this conversation, because it can be fruitful, or you can be like a tyrant
yeah.
would treat a slave. And if you do that, you're not going to be able to achieve, I don't think, the joy and the understanding that you would otherwise.
Well, I think that's rather beautiful. You use the term negotiation, and you and I have been in business in many different environments. We have been in negotiations with many different people and kinds of people. So to get to gratitude to yourself in your own self negotiation that you're talking about, of how you become who you want to be, that sets up the right paradigm. And it's no fun to be in a negotiation with somebody who's angry, upset, is somehow trying to get something to get you. And so if you're in your own negotiation, you get to choose your negotiation partner.
Yeah. And I think that's where that gratitude comes in, not in
Yeah.
a narcissistic or egotistical way,
Yeah.
but something that frees you up or makes you available to what you would grant as a judicious reward, which is even more incentive for you to pursue that line, to pursue that goal, to pursue that feeling, if you will, or that experience. So it goes back to being fair to yourself. The good book says, love your neighbor as yourself. And it's
Hmm.
difficult if you don't like you. Ain't very many other people are going to want to be around you, I don't think. So it starts
Yeah.
internally, starts within yourself to be able to accurately, but also truthfully, and I think to a large degree, the ability to see yourself as you really are and be okay with that. But it doesn't mean you have to stay there.
And the moral of the story in so many societies, in so many times, is whatever the equivalent is of the golden rule. I mean, it is the love thy neighbor as thyself, give and have service in life. That's something you have done profoundly in your life. It is oftentimes, like so many things we talk about, a lot easier to talk about than it is to do. I've I've had an opportunity to witness your rubber meets the road. I'm going to do that. It is something that produces amazing things in your life. So let's talk not just about the things you do. And I know sometimes we shy away from talking about the particular things we do, but I want to talk about the impact that has on you as an individual. When you undertake service, when you take it seriously, when you incorporate it into your daily, weekly, monthly, yearly part of your life, what does that do to you and for you?
Steve, I think if I was truthful with myself, when you get down to that, the aspect of the service for me is not just the end result, but for me, it's the relationships that are built along the way. What is
Yeah.
it's a selfish thing, I admit it.
Yeah.
But I enjoy the people that are engaged in a common cause with a common purpose.
Yeah.
Everybody I know, everyone I've met knows something I don't know. And that it's a great learning experience. I think you get to see life in a different context. You understand it better. And,
Yeah.
I think one of the things, kind of an epiphany that I've had is this understanding that it's a mistake to aim for a better life if it comes at the cost of worsening someone else's.
Yes. Yes.
And so the things I want to be involved in, I don't it's not a zero sum game for me. I want to be involved in things that can flourish, that can grow, that can expand. I think the joy, selfishly, do I get something out of it? Yes, I do. But I also want to see it flourish, to grow, to bloom, and that's it's not the end result as much as it is the process along the way and the people you get to experience and be in relationship with.
I think we could do better at pitching it. You know, as someone who's pitched everything from entertainment shows to businesses and the like, we can get really good at pitching those things
Mm-hmm.
because they're tangible. We know when I'm pitching you a new startup that what I'm looking at is getting return on investment. I know what the goal is. We could do better at pitching the things you're talking about. And that's why I dig into them. And that's why we talk about them here,
Mm-hmm.
because it helps to it helps people, I believe, to know that they're heading to something that will enhance their life. And
Yeah.
you're an example of that. So to hear it, I think is a beautiful thing. And I think we should be better at pitching it.
Well, and the shameless pitch is this Alderson Griffin Center for Family Business and Entrepreneurship was an outgrowth of me saying, I've learned lessons within the family business. I don't want people to make the same mistakes I did.
Yeah.
Learn from me, if you will. I'm happy to share it with you because you deserve better, and I was able to work through those. So if I can give you a start or a jump or two ahead of the game in dealing with mom and dad, in dealing with brothers and sisters, in dealing with a concept that you may not be all that familiar with, but you're fixing to be thrust into the middle of it, whether you want to or not. There are lessons out there. And so that was, because that was the driving point, Steve, in my life. I think that was the reason that the opportunity presented itself. Our eyes are always pointing at the things we are interested in. And I think it
100%.
caught my eye,
Yeah.
and it's probably tired of me staring at it, because I've been staring at that concept for a long time, and
Yeah.
you and your team are bringing this to fruition in such a magnificent way. So thank you.
Well, it's lovely. What I love about this is usually in our episodes, we put a little segment, as you know, that says this is powered by the Alderson Griffin Center for Family Business and Entrepreneurship. We get to just talk about it in here organically and not do it. So you said it's outside. Let's take the outside and bring it inside, because we get to the family business piece of this equation. And you lived it. So because you lived it, this gives us a chance on a broader scale to help bring some of those lessons. So unpack it for me. Where are we going? Let's start with you. You sit down with me, the person who is in a family business, and give me a few things that I need to be thinking of in order for it to serve all of us and have a better experience.
Well, I think probably understanding, if I can say this, the owner or the founder's mindset is crucial,
Yeah.
and appreciating where they came from. And as a second generation, looking at the way my dad built the business, I didn't have a grasp or a concept of not only how it began and what it could be, but
Right.
who he was in this process. And the
Yeah.
beauty of it was I got to understand as much about him and the psychology
Yeah.
and the emotional aspects of this business, and how it becomes another member of the family conceptually, I think, to a large
Yeah.
degree. So
Makes sense.
understanding that at the front end and not resenting it, but appreciating it. You may
Yeah.
not agree with all the way that it was done. That's not the point. The point is that you understand and you appreciate the sacrifice, the effort, the
Right.
discipline that went into this thing, and how has that impacted you going forward. And I think that kind of sets the table, if you will, to have this meal with your parents or your mom or your dad or whoever, your brothers and sisters, to better understand and appreciate what's been done, that frees you up to see and to do and to create what can be, I think.
You know, we talk all the time about two particular things: to be curious and to be open. And I think those are a great start, no matter what the ecosphere is. But when I hear what you're talking about as an epiphany along the way, that is, if I don't understand the founder, my father, and the relationship that he has to the business that I'm now becoming a part of, I have no chance of really being able to get the picture, even so I can function correctly. That's profound.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think it just helps you move forward. And I'll use the word liberate. It frees you up to be
Yeah.
able to see it
Yeah.
clearly, understanding it objectively, but also being able to move strategically. And you don't get paralyzed by this analysis, if you will. You see it, you get it. All right, now let's go to the next step. We've seen in this first 100 days of Trump and that relationship with Elon Musk. There are two founders. These are two entrepreneurs that are trying to run the government. And
Yeah.
so it's different than a manager's mentality, one who's kept to keep the status quo, incremental change, delegate authority. That's not the mindset of these guys. They've got a small group, both of them do, that want to run the company and change the way government is done. So it's a fascinating study. Somebody's going to write a book on that, and just the psychology of this is
A
it's
book. There are gonna be a lot of books,
Maybe
boy.
two.
There are gonna be a lot of books. Do you know what president has had the most books written about? I would say him or her, but unfortunately, as of now, only hymns. What president has had more books written about him?
I would, in my opinion, I don't know this to be a fact. I would guess Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, over 15,000. I mean, it's a gigantic number of books. It's just insane, which of course is one of those things probably that captures an essence of what happens in all things, all business, all life, and all countries, and the world and our social interactions, which is we tend to remember better, we tend to focus more on crisis,
Mm-hmm.
on times of crisis, and the people who manage to bring us through those. How does that correspond in the family business world?
Yeah. I think, you know, to a large degree, it's it's not the crisis, but what people I think are interested in, and in the family business, it's the response to it that dictates
Yes.
the next step. It's
Yes.
the crises are going to happen. If
Yes.
they're going to be out there, you're not going to be avoid them. You're not going to be able to avoid them. The question is, what is your reaction going to be? To will they overwhelm you, or will you understand and learn from the ramifications, and
Mhm.
then make changes accordingly?
And can't we learn something? We who wish to contribute, we who wish to make the world a better place, can we not learn something from what you just added on to crisis? It's not the crisis, it's literally the fact that the people who are able to work together to solve something are to thank for why we can be here today.
Mm-hmm. Right.
We couldn't have this. We couldn't be here if it had not been for the people who managed to bring those things forward and make that difference. I do think it translates into business in all ways. So there inevitably, let's just say not just business, but life, right? This is what I love about Smarter You Media. I love doing this each and every time because it feels like we start off here and we get deeper and deeper and deeper. And I think at the very depth of all of this, life is a series of challenges.
If I can use a baseball analogy,
Oh, you
Steve,
can, because we're going to get to the baseball,
okay.
brother.
Well,
It's not, it's coming.
let me use an analogy here, and that is, if there's these personal crises in your life and you're wanting to fix them, and or you're not willing to do this yet, but you're willing to do that, I would say aim small, fix something you can,
Yeah,
and build on that for today, and then look forward to the next opportunity tomorrow. And what happens is, I think these these baselines that you builds, it's like compound interest. It continues to get a little bit
yeah,
better and better. Your
yeah.
courage, your understanding, your willingness to take on and to confront then begins to be a little more robust, because you've had these small victories. You've hit a single instead of trying to hit a grand slam, and that's what life
Yeah.
is. I think it's a combination and accumulation of hitting singles. Every now and then the home run comes, but guess what? You can't hit a grand slam without having somebody else on base. You've had to put the people in
Yeah.
place to
Yeah.
make it work, or put yourself in place to be able to experience and take advantage of that opportunity. So hit singles. Don't worry about the home run.
And honestly, you're the what one baseball is such a good life analogy simply because of the numbers. And people who don't follow baseball, it won't understand. But if somebody gets a give me a batting average for someone who was in on your college team that was one of the best players,
Yeah.
what would the average have been?
We had an All-American third baseman who played in the Phillies, was played in World Series for the Phillies, was a world champion, as well as a national champion on our team. I think he hit 410. Okay, but he was the exception to the rule. Steve, there
No,
are
no, I
guys
know, I
to,
know, but this is where I'm going to get to you. Because I'm going to get,
okay.
yes, we'll get to the other side, but you're
Yeah.
talking about an extraordinary talent, and
Yeah.
still that means at bats less than half the time
Yes.
they didn't get a hit.
No, no, there are
That
guys making millions of dollars that fail 2 out of 3 times,
yes,
Steve.
and they're extraordinary
And
because
they're
that's
perceived as successful. Why
yeah.
can't we be fair with ourselves in that regard? How's it any different?
Well, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you. You're so right. Just listen to that. If you don't hear anything else, it's literally give yourself a break because particularly when you strive for the extraordinary, you are never going to get that every day, all the time. And not only is that right, and not only is that beautiful, it is beautiful because it wouldn't feel extraordinary if it weren't that way. So I'm going to go to baseball again, where you're hitting singles. I think that's what we do in everything. There is no project you've ever done, big, small, medium, whatever, that didn't come in incremental paths. You're hitting singles every time you try to solve something anyway.
Yeah, and I think it's that the compound interest that continues to grow. These things stack up. You stack
Yeah,
these little singles on top of each other, and the next thing you know, you got the bases loaded, and you're ready for the next at bat. And it just there's something about that and
yeah,
knowing full well that to get the 3 men on it, you might fail 2 or 3 times before you can get them on there too. You understand that doesn't happen every inning, and it's
yeah,
not going to happen every inning. And there's values in lost leaders, I think, Steve, in the business world, quite frankly, because if you're willing to grasp and understand why they didn't work, it's going to ensure and insulate you the next time to be aware,
yeah,
but also to be available to make the adjustment, to make the pivot. Say, I know what happened there. It's not going to happen this time around. I'm going to do it this way,
yeah.
and there you go. Then you've got another little victory. You've aimed small, but these little small victories add up to things significant over time. They do.
Yeah, well, it's really nice to talk to people who have been in what we like to think of as the successful side of business, who talk about these things because so often it feels like people can tell their narrative as if it was destined to be this way because I'm so smart. it's, well, of course, I was just so smart, and that's
Yeah.
why I was so successful. I believe there's a beautiful piece of all of it that is luck. I believe there's a beautiful piece of it that is trial and error. I mean, we talk a lot at the center about create and iterate because that's what the world is, whether people tell you or not. The entrepreneur who had immediate success and had not built things that died before is really just not telling you their whole story.
Yeah, I agree.
So there's no way not to go directly into sports because there's sports lore that you had a hit that was heard around the Texas world.
Well, not many, but
You
I,
had
I, I,
one.
I'll reference one,
Okay.
and if and indulge me here, Steve. I apologize. This may take 2 minutes, but
You
I
take look sports stories. We could do longer than 2 minutes.
this
They're
is
they're the most.
it was the most unique situation I've ever been involved with. It was my junior year, 1975, at the University of Texas. We were in the College World Series, and we had won 2 games and lost one. It was double elimination. So we were playing a team South Carolina University.
Yeah.
And I was not in the starting lineup that night. I was coaching first base. And so
Okay.
it got to be about the fifth or sixth inning, and I look over there, and Coach Gustafson, he was in the dugout, and he calls timeout, and he says, Griffin, come in, you're going to hit. And I said, okay. So I run in there thinking I'll be the next guy on deck or whatever. So I get my helmet, and he said, no, you're hitting right now. And I said, well, there's a guy hitting right now. And he goes, you're hitting for him. Well, he had two
Uh,
strikes on him. He had a ball and two strikes. Coach
wow.
Gustin calls timeout and he says, Griffin, come hit for this guy.
Wow. Wow.
Okay, so I'm
No
getting my helmet
pressure.
on and I'm
No
thinking,
pressure. No
my
pressure.
goodness. And so he's on my way walking up the steps out of the dugout to the batter's box. He goes, "Oh, by the way, Griffin, you got two strikes on you. Don't take anything close." And I'm going, "No lie." I may have said something else,
Yeah, it may
but
have, but
that
we'll
was
keep
my
it clean.
response. And I just by the grace of God, we get up there and the guy he throws a fastball high and away, and then he comes back in with another one, and I hit a single over the second baseman's head, knock in a run or two, and I don't know. I still can't believe it today.
and finish the
Well, we went
story.
on. We went on to win the national
Yeah.
championship. I played the next game and got 3 hits in that game, and then that was a magical year for me and the
Yeah.
teammates that we could experience together on that thing. So anyway, that's that little story for
Come
whatever
on,
it's
that's a
worth.
great story. It's fun to have. I mean, we have moments that really transcend. That's a transcendent moment. And sports are particularly good at helping us feel that and see it, aren't they?
Yeah, I would say that life in so many ways is mirrored through those experiences because of the abject success and the abject failure that exists in just about in every event. Someone's going to feel success. Someone's going to experience the heartbreak of defeat and failure. How do you
Yes.
respond? How are you going to respond?
Yeah. And you don't necessarily have control over the thing that happens, but you do have some sense of control, or you can have control over how you respond.
Without a doubt.
But this begs one of those deep, deep questions. So I'm going to dare to ask us because that's what we do here. You have moments that are those transcendent moments, and they happen in business, they happen in sports, they happen in life. And there are a lot of other moments that aren't that. And the adrenaline and the dopamine and the serotonin that all come from those things balancing into our lives is one of the things that people can truly struggle with. And honestly, that I think we all have to cope with. How do we do that?
I think that the experience dictates that to some degree, and the degree of emotional impact is going to play a role there, Steve. It's Man, that's a tough one because
It's
you want to
deep.
be resilient. You
Yeah.
you you don't want to give up. You don't want to
No,
wave the white flag. But by the same token, some things are just so difficult that it makes it a very high challenging situation. And it's not the physical toll it takes on you, it's the emotional toll.
of
And
course.
so
Of course.
keeping that in mind and understanding that, and I guess what I would say is this, and this is it is trite and probably not that effective, but what can I gain? What did I gain from this? It hurt me. I'm upset. I didn't achieve what I wanted to do. What did I learn from that? And if I can at least condense it into that context, I think it maybe takes the absolute failure aspect out of the equation and becomes an opportunity to understand and to improve and to respond in an appropriate way. I don't think that answers your question, Steve, but that's
No.
if we can see it that way, at least it takes the edge off, if I could say
Well, Mark Griffin, the best questions don't have answers.
that.
The best questions don't have answers. And I don't think this is one that sort of is give me a formula. I think we are universally, I love when we hit the universals because no matter where you are, what you do, what you've done in your life, you will experience this. You will experience peaks and valleys because that's the way the experience happens. And honestly, that's the way the chemicals are in our body. And none of us have the same chemicals, but we do experience all of those things. So, for my experience, when you're the CEO of a publicly traded company and you're being placed on the cover of Inc. magazine and the Wall Street Journal, and you have all of those incredible highs that come from that, the other side is when that time stops. To be honest with yourself, I made a concerted effort to really be honest with myself and be okay with that, to be able to enjoy the things that came, but not feel like somehow without that in my life today, all day, I would not be whole. That was just a great gift to myself. But I think we all have to do that. I think no matter what it is we do. And then what you've done is the second piece of that, which is the best advice I ever give to people, which is don't look back, look forward and do something.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what.
Yes. 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 And
Do something. Talk to me about those things. But the Texas Tech University system that you've been chairman of the Board of Regents for a period of time is a place that educates 64,000 students across 5 universities, 17 cities, and multiple countries. So that's not little stuff. On the other hand, it's not what you were doing before. It's a great example to me. So how did you get to that? Tell us what prompted you to think now's the time and brought you into the education world in that way.
well, that one's an easy question for me, Steve, because my parents were very much committed to the education system and the process.
Yeah.
And I had served for 14 years on the school board in Lubbock.
Yeah.
So I had that immersion, if you will, into the aspects of the classroom and the administration. Now, taking it to higher ed, that's an appointed position. You don't just sign up and get in line, and they put you in the chair. That was appointed by the governor, and I was fortunate enough to be able to have that opportunity. But we deal with big issues. But if we lose sight of the fact that the essence of what we do is improving the one-on-one relationship in that classroom or in that lab,
Yeah.
or in that field study, if we lose sight of that, then anything else we do is not going to have the impact that we desire. And
Yeah.
it's a simple concept, but it's profound in its application. And if that's the focus, then you've got a chance to have a dynamic system and a dynamic higher ed institution that changes young people's lives and gives them the opportunity to be and to understand who they are, but also to grasp and to strive for what they can be. And teachers in my world are the patron saints
Here.
in
Right.
so many ways,
Yeah.
because they don't, what they do is not fill a bucket, they light a fire. And they do it in so many beautiful ways that I hold them in very high esteem. And we don't need to get into the conversation of how they're compensated and what the expectations are of them today, especially in K through 12. That's a different matter completely, but I just hold them in high esteem because they're not doing it for the money, and their soul is filled with, I think, an affection, but also an appreciation and a willingness to say, we're going to try this, and I believe you can make something better of yourself.
Yeah. And teachers are one of those. I feel like we correctly thank military people who have served in the military for their service. I feel like we should do that to teachers too.
Absolutely.
When I meet a teacher, I say thank you for your service.
Yes.
Because I do believe it is one of the great cornerstones of what we will be as a society, what our kids and
Yeah.
grandkids are going to live in will certainly be imbued by that which is brought into their classrooms, for
Yeah. And
sure.
if you don't think it's a battleground every day, you don't understand the system.
You haven't been there, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it is, and you always have to have people participating in it. And you don't have to be chairman of the board of regents of
That's
a large
correct.
school. You can be a mentor. You
Hmm.
can show up and volunteer in classrooms. You can participate at any kind of level that makes sense for you within the education system or any other, and it fits the paradigm you and I have been talking about,
Yeah.
which is do something. We share the legal background, and again, believing in education, it changes how you look at things. How did you bring law into the boardroom? How did you bring law into the family business? How did that education change how you look at the world and the businesses you were a part of?
It wasn't the statutory side of the legal side of the experience, Steve. It was the absolute requirement going through law school to look at both sides of the equation. You
Yeah.
had to be able to be prepared to argue this way or on the other side of the issue. And if you didn't,
Yeah.
you were not serving your client in an appropriate way. Translating that into the business world, simple. You've got the
Yeah.
business management side of it and the operation and the strategy you want to employ. But you also, if you don't understand how the customer situation and their experience and their relationship is going to be, it doesn't matter what your strategy is. If the customer ain't happy, it ain't going to work.
Well, I get the feeling, Mr. Mark Griffin, that we could talk and talk for a long time, which I plan to do with you, whether you like it or not, outside of Smarter You. But we like to end this with a way that we help ourselves curate information. As you know, in the Texas Tech system, information's everywhere. Not all of it's good. So
Yeah.
if we can get better information and curate our own information better, it's good for us. So send us off to our day with something you found as a resource that really has been useful in your world.
I'll tell you, it's a book I'm reading right now,
Oh,
Steve.
yeah.
That And really two books, but by the same author. And you'll be familiar with this guy. His name's Jordan Peterson. He's a
Oh, yeah.
Canadian psychologist, and really the the phrase that I introduced at the outset of comparing ourselves to who we were yesterday, not to who someone else is today,
Yeah.
that was one of the chapters in his book, 12 Rules of Life, or 12
Mm,
Rules for Life. But I'm also reading We Who Wrestle with God, and that's been a fascinating study that has really caused me to not necessarily rethink, but have a deeper understanding and maybe appreciation of the biblical text and how an interpretation or an observation that can be made that would give some insight and maybe a different meaning. So those are things that I'm looking at right now. Anything I read, I'm a nonfiction guy, so it has to.
yeah.
I either want to read about people's lives or how appropriate some of their wisdom as to how I can be better myself.
Well, that's great. And I know it's a shock to you as you look behind me that I'm a big
Yeah.
fan of books, but I
Yes.
am a big fan of books. And I think generalizing from those two, and those are great because you know me, I'm going to read them both now. But just understanding the resource that goes into someone committing and writing a book and the things that we can get out of that as we expand our universe, to me, is just a fantastic way for us to wrap this thing up. I know you'll be back because you're going to haunt Smarter You as long as you will possibly allow us to let you haunt it. Uh, Mark Griffin, what a pleasure. It
Well,
always is.
thank you. My pleasure. And Steve, you're doing great work. Fascinating, instructional and encouraging. And thank you.
Well, enjoy your day, everybody. Mark Griffin, thank you for being here. And don't
My pleasure.
forget today, everybody, to be curious and open. That will make it a better day. We'll see
Yes,
you
sir.
next time.
Thank you.